You said in your announcement that you wanted to stay with Dignitas because you feel like a lot of good things started to happen when you came to Dignitas. What exactly is it about Dignitas that has inspired your loyalty?
Well, I met Odie officially, and we actually had a good conversation in IEM Cologne in 2014 December when I was there with H2K. And at the time, I wasn't contracted to H2K, so I was free to discuss things very openly with him. And I got to meet him and understand his logic and the way he wanted to run his team. And I'd known about him for a long time because in one of my old teams, TCM, back in 2013, the owners were good friends with Dignitas and they spoke very highly of them. So I already knew what his reputation gave. And getting to know him then already gave me a great impression. Fast forward 2.5 months later, I had decided to play with a team called SK Prime, though we weren't contracted to them. And during the time, Odie was discussing with me potentials for the new Dignitas NA coach because there was issues with crumbs. And the subject of me being the coach came up and I explained to him, I'm actually playing for this challenger team. We're not contracted and we're looking for sponsors. And it just kind of came to be that they signed us at that time to play for them. And one thing that was very apparent to me with this organization was if we needed something, he would just give it to us because he knew that we were able to use the resources. We need to fund a coach and an analyst. So we got that. We needed to buy out some new players. We needed to buy out Kobe and Voidal from their old teams. We got that. He trusted so much in the mindset of the players that he treated them so well that inspired my loyalty, and it gave me a lot of freedom eventually when I became head coach so that I could run the team the way I thought the team should be run, and I knew that I have the authority given to me by him and the resources given to me by him within reason, obviously.
So how important do you think it is to have that sort of trust between the owner and the players and the staff?
Something that bothered me a lot was when I was watching, for example, TSM Legends, when Reginald kind of came over and blew Loco Doco out of the water, was that the owner was taking over where the coach should be doing his job. The owner of an organization needs to be bestowing resources and authority to the coach, to the team, not going over the coach. And Odie not once did that with me. He trusted my ability to make the right decision. And I feel that's super important because if the coach is given no authority by the organization, then the players will not give the coach the authority he needs.
So originally, when you did go to Dignitas EU, you were playing for them. What kind of made you make the decision to finally, because you had done some coaching in the past, to make that transition from playing to coaching?
Senkux approached me and said, hey, we need a jungler for this team because SK didn't want to get obvious for them. So he's like, do you want a jungle? And I just thought, yeah, why not? So at that point, I decided I wanted to try and come back, and maybe I thought that playing on a team would invoke some kind of more passion to play the game. But the game was dead to me at that point in the sense of a play. I just didn't enjoy playing it. And as soon as that was made absolutely clear to me, I decided that's it. I'm never going to be a player again. But I needed to try one last time to see if there was any hope coming back.
I've heard from other players and stuff that maybe your strengths as a player were more in the communication aspects and the shot calling and maybe understanding the game. Do you feel like good game communicators and shot callers always make good coaches?
No, because it's very easy to be able to know what the best thing is, but it's the hardest thing to be able to convey it to the players. That's something that I had to learn through, I guess I would say, trial and error and figure out the best way to communicate with players. So yeah, good shot callers, people with good game knowledge, people who understand the game flow, eventually will be able to make good coaches and analysts. But the things that make a real coach a good coach are things that I have not fully developed yet, and I'm hoping to be able to fully develop them during my tenure with Dignitas NA this year.
Do you believe that there are weaknesses of yourself as a coach that you might not be able to overcome?
Yeah, maybe. I haven't really figured out what those weaknesses are yet. I mean, I understand that there are some things that I could do better on, but I am not sure if I'm not able to overcome them just yet. So what I'm planning to do is to minimize any issues with that, is to bring capable and dedicated people to my support staff. And I can't really talk about who's going to be coming with me just yet, but it should be announced quite soon that I'm bringing in about 2 or 3 potentially extra people to come with me to live it in-house and create a really good support staff for the players so that I'm able to figure out where my weaknesses lie and then delegate the resources appropriately.
So where do you see yourself right now, I guess, in this hierarchy of your 3 or so analysts that you've mentioned?
I'm the head coach. My job as a head coach is to be the head coach, the one to delegate resources and responsibilities to whoever I see appropriately, manage the game flow of the team, do strategy, do pick ban, be on stage with them. I feel like I could be a jack of all trades while delegating specific things to the people that I'm bringing on and have them help me accomplish that goal. So I'll still be doing a lot of work and doing pretty much everything that involves playing the game.
I've heard some coaches that I've talked to at Worlds talk about how being an ex-player can be a double-edged sword because you can both understand how the players feel in approaching to the game and also maybe sort of try to impose your own ideas and your own habits upon them. Where do you feel like you fit in that spectrum?
Probably in the middle. I can understand the sentiment that it could be a double-edged sword in that sense because I had a lot of habits in the game that I couldn't fix as a player and I didn't have the proper coaches to help me fix that. So that was actually one of the weaknesses I'm talking about is getting rid of those bad habits. But one thing that I'm definitely looking to work on and I feel like I can do a really good job of is have an open mind and come to an agreement with the players, with all 5 of the players, of how we all agree how the game should be played and discuss a team identity with them as soon as possible.
Before we move on talking a little bit more about the prospects for Dignitas North America, let's talk about Follow eSports, which used to be Dignitas EU. You've worked with those players, you've played with those players. How do you feel like that team might do in the European LCS?
I feel like they're going to need a couple of roster changes before they really do much. Working with them had been very good at some points and very, very bad at some other points. And without naming names, I feel like there are a few players that may need a complete attitude change or probably be benched. But they definitely have talent and potential. Specifically, Senkux and Kobe were, in my opinion, the star players of that team. And they have the biggest potential and the biggest ceiling to improve and become probably top players in that region.
Obvious is no longer going to be with the team. Do you think that that was a good change, or did that set the team back?
I enjoyed working with Obvious, and I feel like he's a great guy, but it just didn't mesh anymore after the first 2 weeks. It just felt like there was too many personal and in-game issues between the players and how they wanted to play the game. And we tried a lot to change Obvious's habits, where he's a very farm-based jungler, and I needed someone who could be invasive and aggressive in the enemy jungler and place wards around to protect the laners. Like Cobbin needed the freedom to be able to do his thing. Senkux definitely needed his freedom to be able to pressure his lane. Same with Wonder. They could have done a lot more with an aggressive jungler. And I felt that we tried so hard to fix these issues, and it was just not going fast enough that we decided that as a team, before they even got sold off, even if they got sold off and I wasn't staying with them, they all decided, yes, we need a change in the jungle. And I feel like the replacement, which should be announced soon, is the perfect replacement. Everyone was unanimous in deciding who it would be.
What do you think about the decision to make the team all Danish? Do you think that that was a good decision in retrospect?
That's a personal decision of them. I feel like they're more comfortable speaking in Danish. I hope that in the future it doesn't stop them from branching out into other nationalities, kind of like Giants did, bringing in Godfred, because there are definitely talented players, talented non-Danish players that could help this team become one of the best.
You said on Twitter that there were a lot of that you were going to make some roster changes. Could you give us maybe a little bit of a hint or any information there?
There's a possibility that no one from the original team will be on that team, and there's a possibility that only 1 or 2 people from that original team will still be on that team. It could be anything, and one thing that I want to make absolutely certain is I want to work with players who speak English, because multi-language teams, in my opinion, are incredibly difficult to turn into good teams. You can get individual players, but the way that Riot are shifting the meta is less individual skill and more team-based, and you can't have good synergy if you're not on the same page. And going there, when I was there during the summer split, I saw a lot of tension between players simply because they just couldn't communicate the problems that they had with each other properly.
So talking a little bit about the communication issue, do you think that, you said that they were having issues because they couldn't communicate the problems they have. I feel like a lot of people think when you talk about communication issues, you're talking about communication in-game and language barrier in-game. What do you feel are the biggest hurdles that a mixed language roster needs to overcome?
In-game communication is less impactful, I feel, as out-of-game communication, because you're living with guys that you've probably never lived with before, and probably people who've never even had a roommate before. There's obviously going to be tendencies that are going to annoy you, or in-game tendencies as well, that you're going to want to talk about outside of the game, that you're probably not going to be able to talk about if the guy you're talking to doesn't understand what you're saying. In game, it's really easy to say ping kill, or ping gank, or ping TP. Like, these are very basic terms that everyone understands. When you get to the in-depth strategy and in-depth habits that you're trying to change, it's very, very difficult. It's a huge hurdle to cross, and I feel like it's just an unnecessary obstacle that is easily overcome by just bringing players who speak the same language.
Do you think that having a mixed language roster impedes like strategic development of a team?
It makes it more difficult. It's not impossible, but it makes it more difficult. And I feel like right now, I'm not good enough as a coach to be able to bring a team that I want to bring to as good as possible while dealing with a mixed language roster. It's just something I want to avoid.
And the other thing you mentioned was the direction that the meta is headed and the way Riot is changing it. PBE information is starting to come out. It's for the preseason.
I don't really know, honestly. Excuse my language. I really have no clue what Riot are doing. I can't make any assumptions until we see the game. Like, Graves is a shotgun now, Corki is Rumble ult, and I really have no clue what's gonna happen until it happens, because for all we know, like, Mordekaiser is going to be like an AD carry again. Blitzcrank will be a mid laner with rockets shooting out of his arms. Freaking Sona's gonna be I don't know, man. Like, Riot like to change a lot of things, and right now it's difficult to see where the meta's going, but I feel like just by looking at the certain changes, AD carry will be very impactful in the next split. Maybe not the most impactful role, but it's going to be up to the AD carry to figure out the best way to play it. So the smarter, the better player is going to succeed better in this role.
So you mentioned the AD carry having a bigger impact. Is that going to influence the priority in the way you look at making roster changes?
Yeah, absolutely. We've definitely been looking at different AD carry options right now. And we're looking for a player that is not only mechanically sound, but someone that is able to adapt and has been adapting over the seasons, or we feel has the potential to adapt. I can tell you that I've paid very close attention to the EU Challenger scene when it's come into picking up talent. And I'm not afraid to pick up Challenger players who are untested and turn them into better players.
And when you're looking for an important AD carry, how does that also change the way you look at the other roles on the team?
Again, like right now, all I'm looking for is smart players who are solid in multiple aspects, because I'm not sure how the meta's going. But it does affect, because I'm going to need players who understand how to take a backseat role if another role is needing to be the one to carry. For all we know, they could change AD carries and it might be a mid-centric meta again in Season 6.
Talking a little bit about the fallout, I guess, of the World Championship, we saw European teams do better than North American teams.
Obviously.
You've played in both regions. Could you give us a little bit of an insight into some of the differences between the European teams?
EU just has more talented players. The NA talent pool right now is shot to crap right now because of all the imports, basically reducing the incentive. Like, a lot of players lost motivation to play, which is weird. Like, if better players and better teams are coming, you know, people should be more hyped to play. Because I know when Origin came to Challenger scene, no one whined and bitched and said, oh, look at this top tier team playing in the Challenger series, we're just not going to bother. No, everyone was like try-harding for their lives to see if we could beat them. Whereas when I was in NA and LMQ came, everyone was like whining and crying, and I'm just there saying, like, why? This team is great. We could learn a lot and crush them. Like, I just want to crush them now. And it feels like the mindset is so different. And I feel that mindset holds back so many players in North America.
So do you think that when you're talking about, you're looking at EU Challenger players, is that kind of mindset more important than maybe the skill that you're talking about?
The skill matters to a certain extent, but the more a player wants to improve, the hungrier he is, the faster he can improve, and the more he's willing to put in. So that's definitely a factor when it comes to picking up players I feel that every team should be looking into.
We're seeing a lot of roster changes in the North American LCS during this off-season. Do you think the fact that, as you said, the talent pool is kind of different has contributed to the wide variety of roster changes we're seeing?
Because right now all the teams that are making overhauls are now looking for NA players who are like NA players that are actually decent, and are like, well, crap, there aren't many of them, so let's start bidding for these players. And there's a lot of money being thrown around, a lot of money being thrown around right now. So it's basically, when the free agency date comes in the coming weeks, it's just going to be a huge cluster. I'm not gonna just cluster of bidding, and Yeah, the race to pick up as many solid NA players is upon us. It's difficult right now for a lot of organizations, and I feel like some rosters will be having to dip into the NA Challenger pool and pick up some players from there.
Piggybacking off of that real quick, I want to ask, do you think it was also exacerbated by North America's performance at Worlds?
I mean, North America's performance at Worlds was fairly obvious to predict, but some teams in particular, like CLG, kind of went down a bit harder than people would have expected. I don't see a possibility of NA ever doing better than EU this year at Worlds, ever. Don't think it's going to be very difficult for an NA team to make semifinals. Maybe in the year, if something happens to the NA talent pool and the teams just all become better, there is a chance for like another Cloud9 scenario, but I feel like it'd be very difficult.
How far is Dignitas going to go?
I don't want to say we're going to crap on everyone and then get shit on, honestly. Coming in there, I have high expectations for my ability and the team's ability, so I'm looking to have a more successful split than the last splits of Dignitas. And even if we might not be top 3, I want to avoid this curse with Dignitas where the mid-season choke and just be consistent throughout the split. So even if we're consistently crap, then we'll be consistently crap. But obviously we're aiming to be consistently good, and we want to go to Worlds and the organization wants to win. So I'm going to do as best as I can to make that a reality. And
you are in Berlin for the finals of the World Championship. How does it feel to be here knowing that very soon you're going to North America?
It's a bit emotional because this is going to be my last visit to Berlin in a really long time. Originally, my plan was to coach the EU LCS team. Obviously, things change, and it's a bittersweet type thing. Like on one hand, yeah, I was just almost getting used to living in Berlin or being in Berlin after being here so many times this past year. At the same time, I really, really want to stay with Dignitas, and I want to make this organization as strong as possible and the team as strong as possible. So I'm just excited to work with Dignitas, and I'd like to thank the sponsors of Dignitas. And since I'm really, really bad at this, I'm just going to have to look here to see what our sponsors are. So I'd like to thank Corsair, Alienware, Multiplay, Intel, EMA, Twitch, Scan, WD, TP-Link, and Alpha Draft. Thank you for the support and the resources you've given us to try to make as strong of a team as possible, and for giving me the opportunity and Dignitas the opportunity to make something work over in NA.
You do have some experience working with this Dignitas North American team. What do you think is the most valuable thing that you can learn from that time that you can carry over?
It just taught me that mixed language rosters are just not a thing. That's one. And understanding like a more in depth of how an LCS team is, like the inner workings of an LCS team, and watching the other NA LCS teams scrim. And one thing I noticed is that it's very common in NA to be very late to scrims. So NA, if you're watching this, come to scrims on time or we just won't scrim you.
Okay, thank you very much and good luck.
All right, thank you.